chosen one, people are impressed by how you handled a disgusting situation, and that truth is circulating faster than the chaos ever did. What shook everyone is simple. You kept your character intact while others forfeited theirs. You didn't defend your ego, you protected your integrity. People study your composure like a blueprint. You didn't survive that moment, you elevated through it, calmly, cleanly, decisively. You didn't react, you restructured the energy. When everything around you screamed for you to lose control, you didn't. You refused to give the situation your raw emotion because you understood something most people don't. Reacting is how you transfer power, but restructuring is how you reclaim it. The moment provocation came your way, you caught the vibration behind the actions. You didn't focus on what was said or done, you focused on the energy behind it. You recognized desperation, you identified jealousy, you saw insecurity, you detected deceit, and you flipped it back into something that strengthened you instead of breaking you. That's not emotional intelligence. That's spiritual engineering. You see, people who operate from darkness need chaos to feed off. Manipulators thrive when you respond with anger or tears, because your reaction validates their manipulation. But you broke the system by refusing to supply energy to it. You didn't fight head-on. You rewired the entire frequency of the situation. You let insults dissolve in your stillness. You turned every attempt at humiliation into a silent revelation. Nobody could understand why their tactics suddenly lost power over you. And that's where the shift happened. The same people who wanted to see you lose control started to lose control themselves. You mastered something rare, emotional transmutation. Instead of giving negativity life, you converted it into understanding. You asked yourself, what is being projected here? And why does this need to pull me down? You turned pain into perspective. You converted confusion into clarity. That's not weakness, that's wisdom disguised as calm. You became untouchable, not because you avoided the storm, but because you learned to navigate it without getting soaked. The beauty of it all is that people witnessed it. Everyone saw how attacks came for your peace, and you turned it into proof. You didn't expose anyone. You let the truth reveal itself through your composure. You changed the atmosphere without saying a word. When attempts came to drain you, you recharged yourself. When attempts came to stain you, you purified yourself. That's how you restructured the energy. You demonstrated that power isn't in reacting, it's in remaining rooted while everything else shakes. You didn't fight fire with fire. You became the air that made the fire burn out. You made dignity look like warfare. You stood your ground with such quiet confidence that it shook people more than any confrontation could have. When most would have raised a voice, you raised your vibration. You didn't need to insult, prove, or defend yourself. Your poise did the talking. That's what caught everyone off guard. You didn't walk away defeated. You walked away undefeated in spirit. People expected to see you break, beg, or at least retaliate. But you stayed composed, and that composure spoke louder than chaos ever could. You made self-respect look like a weapon, and nobody was prepared for that kind of power. Others thought dignity meant passivity, but you redefined it. Your calm wasn't weakness, it was calculation. You understood that shouting matches only validate lies, and that stooping low to be understood only makes you smaller. So you stayed still while others stumbled over their own drama. Every time humiliation was attempted, you let behavior expose itself instead. The world got to see the difference between noise and nobility, and you were the lesson. You didn't meet disrespect with anger, you met it with elegance. You turned composure into confrontation, the kind that burns without a single word. What made it even more remarkable was that you didn't just rise above it, you held your dignity like armor. You didn't pretend you weren't hurt, but you refused to let the hurt dictate your actions. That kind of self-control terrifies small minds because it shows maturity others can't fake. You didn't embarrass anyone, People embarrassed themselves by trying to bring down someone who refused to engage in an emotional circus. The more graceful you became, the more foolish others looked. It was poetic justice unfolding in real time, and everyone saw it. Dignity became your strategy, and it worked. You didn't have to expose lies. Behavior did it for you. You didn't have to fight for validation. Your calm presence commanded respect. People are still talking about it, how you made restraint look like power and grace look like vengeance. You didn't just win the situation, you rewrote the rules of strength. You proved that real dominance isn't loud or aggressive. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly who you are and refuses to let anyone pull you out of character. You proved that clean hands can still win dirty battles. In a world where deceit is often seen as intelligence and manipulation is mistaken for strategy, you chose the opposite route and still came out on top. You didn't lie, you didn't scheme, you didn't twist stories to get sympathy. You stood on truth, and it worked. That alone shook people to the core, because everyone was sure your honesty would be your downfall. People were counting on your kindness to make you weak. Everyone underestimated the kind of strength it takes to stay pure in a situation designed to corrupt you. While others were playing dirty, you were playing divine. You knew that the loudest revenge would always come from the peace that follows integrity. You let your actions carry quiet precision. You made choices that didn't just protect your image, you protected your soul. You didn't need to expose anyone, because time would do that naturally. You didn't need to prove your innocence because your character already spoke for you. That's what separated you from the chaos. You didn't join the war, you made the war irrelevant. People are shocked because you broke the rules of how survival usually works. Most people think that in order to win against corruption, you have to become corrupt too. But you proved that purity can outlast poison. You walked through fire without smelling like smoke. And that's what made people respect you differently. It wasn't the words you said. It was the consistency between what you preached and how you carried yourself under pressure. That level of integrity can't be faked. It's built through trial. Those who attacked you are now living proof that winning dirty doesn't last long. Their victories turned hollow while your peace grew louder. You became living evidence that righteousness doesn't mean weakness, it means endurance. You didn't rush to clear your name because you knew truth has a longer lifespan than lies. You trusted that what was built on deception would collapse on its own. That's why the outcome hit harder than any revenge could. You didn't just survive the battle. You turned it into a statement that a clean conscience will always stand taller than a corrupted crown. And now everyone knows it. If this message hits your spirit, hype this video so more chosen ones like you can find it. You became the mirror that made evil see itself. Without saying a word, you revealed everything that needed to be exposed. When you stayed grounded in truth, you didn't have to defend or explain yourself. The energy around you did the revealing. People with bad intentions can't stand someone whose spirit is pure because your calm becomes exposure. Your composure threw others off balance. Nobody could manipulate your emotions or twist your reactions, and that's when illusions started to crumble. The game only works when the target plays along and you refuse to participate. Every interaction with you reflected motives back at people. When lies came your way, the truth bounced off you and came back louder. When provocation was attempted, the silence people met forced them to hear their own noise. Your presence became a kind of spiritual X-ray. It showed people their own insides. That's why discomfort grew around you. It wasn't that you judged anyone. You just existed in a frequency that exposed what was fake. And the moment truth stands still, deception panics. You didn't humiliate anyone. People humiliated themselves by how their behavior looked in front of truth. You didn't expose wrongs with your words. Conscience became the loudest whistleblower. That's divine irony. You became a living judgment without lifting a finger. People walked away feeling uneasy, not because you attacked anyone, but because for the first time some individuals were forced to see what things really looked like without charm or excuses. People saw it too. Everyone noticed that you never raised your voice, yet the truth kept unfolding around you. Observers started realizing that you didn't need to fight anyone, you just had to stand still in your authenticity. Evil doesn't know what to do when it can't hide behind projection. You stripped away comfort by being consistent, calm and real, and that's what made everyone impressed. You didn't try to destroy anyone, you simply allowed self-destruction to happen in the presence of what's genuine. That's what true power looks like. It's not about control, revenge or exposure. It's about being so aligned with truth that falsehood starts unraveling on its own. You didn't fight darkness. You reflected it until it couldn't stand its own reflection. You let consequences speak louder than retaliation. You understood that time has a sharper edge than any words could ever have. Instead of wasting your energy trying to prove your innocence or expose lies, you stepped back and let the universe handle what your mouth didn't need to. You didn't react out of ego or pain, because you knew that divine order doesn't rush, it reveals. Every move you made came from calm awareness, not wounded pride. That's why your story is now unfolding like poetic justice. Everything people thought was hidden is now catching up to them in plain sight. You didn't chase justice because you already carried it within you. Your clean heart, your patience and your consistency became evidence of who you really were. While others were running from accountability, you stood still and let actions betray themselves. And that's exactly what's happening. Words are turning against those who spoke them. Plots are turning on themselves. People are connecting the dots. What was hidden in whispers is now echoing loudly. You didn't have to say a word. Reality is saying it for you. That's what makes people so impressed. Your silence wasn't submission, it was strategy. You trusted that the same energy poured into trying to destroy you would return amplified. And it did. Masks have fallen. Alliances are breaking. The truth is becoming too visible to deny. Every fake smile that mocked you is now trembling under exposure. Every insult that went unaddressed is now being replayed in the open with consequences attached. The same stage used to perform against you has become a public trial. You've proven that real power doesn't chase validation, it lets time do the talking. You became living proof that karma isn't mythical, it's mathematical. What goes out always finds its way back, and the timing is always perfect. You didn't wish harm on anyone, you just trusted balance to do its work. And now that balance is serving you in full view of those who once doubted you, you never sought revenge because you knew the truth. Retaliation satisfies the ego, but consequences satisfy justice. You exposed filth by remaining unstained. Every attempt made to ruin your image only ended up polishing your reputation. You didn't need to fight for clarity, because truth naturally rises to the surface like oil over water. Rumors, manipulation and mockery came your way, hoping to see you crumble or react in bitterness. But all that happened was a revelation of contrast between your spirit and other intentions. The more attacks came, the more obvious it became who was operating from darkness and who was walking in light. You didn't need to defend yourself. Behavior became your defense. Some people depend on dragging others down to hide how low certain individuals have already fallen. Attempts came to stain your character because nobody could match your essence, but you stood firm. You didn't lower yourself to any level because you understood that mud can't attach to what isn't made of the same substance. You were built from something higher, from spirit, from integrity, from divine resilience. That's why every smear attempt only made you shine brighter. You didn't just survive the dirt. You purified it by refusing to absorb it. What makes this even more remarkable is that you didn't pretend to be unaffected. You felt every sting, every betrayal, every lie, but you didn't let it deform your core. You processed the pain quietly. You turned it into growth. You became proof that reputation attacks don't destroy the righteous. Attacks reveal the righteous. People who once doubted you started watching closely. Everyone saw how your consistency outlasted every lie. Observers realized that the more others tried to dirty your name, the cleaner you appeared in comparison. Now those who conspired against you look exhausted while you look elevated. Narratives collapsed under the weight of hypocrisy. You didn't need revenge, you just needed time, and time did what truth always does. Time exposed the lies, balanced the scales, and cleansed the environment. You walked through what was meant to pollute you, but came out refined. You didn't glow because you wanted attention. You glowed because authenticity can't be dimmed by dishonor. That's the real miracle. You didn't escape the mud by running from it. You transformed it by staying pure in the middle of it. You proved that power is the ability to restrain yourself. You didn't let emotions hijack your decisions, or let anger become your voice. When everything around you tried to provoke a reaction, you stayed anchored in awareness. That's rare because most people confuse reaction with strength. Many think yelling, clapping back, or exposing someone means control, but you showed something far greater. True control isn't about domination, it's about direction. You directed your energy with precision. You knew when to move, when to wait, and when to let silence do the talking without it being submission. That level of discipline doesn't come from ego, it comes from evolution. You understood that just because something tempts you doesn't mean it deserves a response from you. You refused to give your power away in moments designed to steal your peace. You didn't retaliate impulsively because you knew that reacting too fast can trap you in the very chaos that was meant to destroy you. Restraint became your strategy, not out of fear but out of focus. You saw the bigger picture while others were busy playing small emotional games. You realized that people who can provoke you can control you, so you took back your control by mastering your reactions. That kind of strength confuses people because many mistake silence for defeat. But what you practiced wasn't silence, it was self-mastery. You learned that your peace is your most valuable currency, and wasting it on temporary chaos is the biggest loss of all. While others let anger dictate choices, you let wisdom guide yours. You didn't just hold back, you held higher ground. You understood that not every fight deserves your presence. Some battles are meant to be won by walking away, not by winning arguments. And people noticed. Everyone saw how your calm under pressure exposed everyone else's lack of control. You didn't have to say you were powerful. Your restraint made it obvious. You taught everyone that the loudest person isn't the strongest. The most composed one is. Power isn't about showing how much damage you can cause. It's about proving how much chaos you can endure without losing yourself. And that's exactly what you did. You didn't just show strength, you became it. You turned humiliation into humanization. What was meant to shatter you ended up shaping you into something extraordinary. Others thought embarrassing you would erase your spirit, but it did the opposite. It expanded your heart. You didn't use your pain as a weapon, you used it as a lens. You began to see what drives people to betray, to lie, to hate, not to excuse anyone, but to understand how empty one must be to operate that way. That's the rarest form of transformation. When pain doesn't make you colder, it makes you wiser. You stopped taking cruelty personally and started seeing it as a mirror of wounds. The humiliation you faced didn't crush your worth, it stripped away illusions. It made you see humanity for what it is, fragile, flawed, and desperate for validation. You realized that sometimes the people who humiliate others are fighting to distract from their own shame. Instead of absorbing that poison, you turned it into clarity. You began to see through masks, and that gave you compassion without naivety. You could now recognize pain disguised as arrogance, insecurity disguised as confidence, and jealousy disguised as judgment. The experience expanded your emotional intelligence far beyond surface wisdom. You didn't become bitter, even when bitterness would have been justified. You didn't close your heart. You refined it. Now let me put you on to something real. Destiny Engine. I built this because I was done watching chosen ones get dragged through betrayal, isolation, and attacks, while their enemies strutted around unchecked. I want to help you accelerate the speed of your divine justice and step fully into your purpose. And the beauty of it, you don't even have to lift a finger. Destiny Engine takes their downfall and flips it into your rise. This isn't another meditation app. It's declassified consciousness technology, the same mind programming tools your enemies once used to install fear, competition, and scarcity, re-engineered to restore your sovereignty and align you with the cooperative, upgraded operating framework. It generates personalized sequences mapped to your divine purpose. The hardest thing you'll do is put on headphones, press play, and watch your enemies keep digging their own grave. The collective upgrade is underway. Start your Destiny Engine for $1 today and turn everything they did to break you into fuel for your rise. Link in the description. That's what left everyone speechless. You showed that dignity isn't lost through humiliation. It's proven by how you handle it. Others tried to reduce you, but the process refined you. You walked out with a softer heart and sharper discernment. You no longer needed to prove your value. The pain already taught you what you're made of. You became more understanding but less tolerant of nonsense. Now people look at you and see depth. Everyone sees someone who has touched rock bottom yet didn't become hard like stone. You became water, able to flow, adapt and heal. You turned shame into self-awareness, and that's something no one can take from you. You evolved from victim to visionary, because you learned how to use pain as education. You didn't escape humiliation, you recycled it into wisdom that now elevates you above the very people who tried to break you. You proved that revenge is too cheap for royal souls. You had every opportunity to strike back, to expose lies, to make others taste the same pain served to you. But you didn't, not because you were weak or afraid, but because you understood something others didn't. Revenge is the currency of the small-minded. It costs your peace, your focus, and your elevation. You knew that engaging in pettiness would require you to step down from the throne you've earned through endurance. So you let others have a moment of false victory, because you knew time would make the truth louder than any retaliation ever could. What others mistook for fear was actually discipline. You chose not to match certain energy, because you recognized that your energy was rare. Others wanted a reaction. You gave a revelation that you operate from a realm beyond reach. You understood that people who live for drama eventually get trapped in it, while those who live in purpose always outgrow it. Your silence wasn't submission, it was the containment of divine fire. You knew that not every insult deserves a roar. Some are best left to echo in the emptiness from which those words came. There's a difference between vengeance and victory. Vengeance wants to prove a point. Victory simply is the point. You chose evolution over ego. You refused to trade your crown for chaos. That kind of restraint requires spiritual wealth, the kind that knows your peace is too expensive to waste on proving yourself to people who already decided to misunderstand you. You didn't fight for revenge because you realized the real punishment for those who wronged you is having to live with what was done. Conscience became a courtroom. People are amazed because everyone expected fireworks and instead saw wisdom. You moved in quiet dignity while others drowned in the noise created. You didn't need to destroy anyone. Actions did the work. You simply stood back and let divine scales balance themselves. That's what makes your power royal. It's not loud, not petty, not reactive. It's knowing that you don't have to descend to prove who you are. You let grace do what wrath never could. Restore your peace and elevate your name without ever getting your hands dirty. You showed that grace can be terrifying to the guilty. When you didn't fight back, others didn't feel victorious. People felt unsettled. Everyone expected retaliation, insults, or some public collapse. But when you responded with composure and forgiveness, it threw the entire script into chaos. Nobody could process why the person targeted for destruction didn't hate back. That's the haunting power of grace. It doesn't argue, it reveals. You didn't give anyone the reaction rehearsed for. Instead, you handed observers silence so sharp it echoed in conscience. Forgiveness isn't always about setting others free. Sometimes it's the mirror that makes people face what was done. Your grace forced confrontation with actions without distraction. Nobody could hide behind your anger because you offered none. Nobody could label you bitter because you were still kind. So now people sit in the discomfort of their own guilt, replaying what happened while you walk in peace. Grace, when embodied correctly, becomes a form of divine justice. It exposes everything ego tried to hide. You see, when you forgave, you didn't release anyone from accountability. You released yourself from the burden of carrying another person's mess. You showed that peace isn't naivety, it's mastery. You didn't forgive because anyone deserved it, but because you refused to let poison live rent-free in your spirit. That's the part that unsettles people the most. You detached with no bitterness, no vengeance, no need to explain. You made it clear that forgiveness isn't reconciliation, it's liberation. You didn't give anyone access again, you just stopped giving people power. What observers admire most about you is how your grace didn't weaken your boundaries. You forgave with your heart, but you still protected your peace. That balance is what makes you powerful. You didn't curse anyone, yet everything done is backfiring naturally. Your kindness became conviction. Your calm became the loudest exposure. People thought victory was won, but nobody can rest because your grace made guilt impossible to escape. That's the irony of divine justice. Sometimes the punishment isn't destruction, it's awareness. And now people live haunted, not by your revenge, but by the realization that you were never an enemy. Others were their own undoing. You turned a public mess into a spiritual masterclass. What was meant to humiliate you ended up becoming a seminar in self-control, integrity, and divine timing. People expected chaos, a meltdown, a breakdown, a public war, but instead you responded with a quiet strength that spoke volumes. You didn't react, you responded. You didn't panic, you pivoted. Every move you made became a lesson in emotional intelligence. Even your silence had structure. You didn't just survive the mess, you turned it into a manual on how to rise above it. You showed that maturity isn't about pretending nothing hurts. It's about managing your pain with purpose. You didn't try to prove your innocence. You let your consistency prove it for you. You didn't argue your truth. You lived it until even the blind could see, and in doing so, you transformed scandal into curriculum. People started watching you differently, not as the victim of drama, but as the demonstration of discipline. Everyone came to see that faith isn't always loud, prayers and perfect outcomes. Sometimes it's simply refusing to fall apart when everything around you does. The beauty is, you never tried to impress anyone, you just stayed grounded in principle, and that became your loudest message. You made people rethink how to handle betrayal, disrespect, and false accusation. You showed that real power is not in exposure, but in elevation. You didn't drag enemies. You outgrew them. You didn't retaliate. You refined. You didn't match energy. You raised frequency. That's why those who once mocked you now mimic your calm. What was once gossip has now turned into guidance. People replay your story, not for entertainment, but for enlightenment. You showed everyone that you don't need to announce your growth. You just need to embody it long enough for the noise to fade and the truth to speak for itself. You became the walking example of what it means to handle fire without losing form, and that's why you won without even competing. You didn't just come out clean, you came out cultured by chaos. What was meant to disgrace you became your divine graduation. And now everyone who witnessed your storm has to admit you didn't lose anything. You taught everything. You stayed human in a situation designed to dehumanize you. Everything was thrown your way. Betrayal, mockery, humiliation. The goal was to turn you cold, bitter and unrecognizable. Others wanted to see you break into something ugly, something angry, something that could finally justify the hurt inflicted. But you didn't take the bait. You stayed human when cruelty begged you to become a monster. You stayed gentle when your pain had every reason to turn sharp. And that right there, that refusal to lose your heart, was the most terrifying and inspiring thing you could have done. You could have fought dirty. You could have exposed every lie, humiliated every hypocrite, and returned every insult tenfold. But you didn't. You knew that reacting like others would mean becoming like others, and you valued your soul too much for that downgrade. That's what most people miss about strength. It's not just surviving the fire, it's surviving yourself in the fire. You kept your empathy intact when others would have thrown it away for revenge. You chose to understand rather than retaliate. That's not weakness, that's transcendence. Even in your silence, your spirit was loud. You handled disrespect without letting it make you disrespectful. You dealt with dishonor without becoming dishonorable. You felt every sting of unfairness and still didn't pass that pain forward. That's how people knew you were built differently. You didn't need validation to prove your worth. You embodied it. You remained kind, even when kindness cost you your peace of mind. And in doing so, you exposed a painful truth. Humanity is the rarest power in a world addicted to retaliation. Those who tried to break you are now haunted by the fact that nobody could. Because how do you destroy someone who refuses to become what hurt them? You didn't lose yourself in bitterness. You found yourself in grace. Your humanity became your weapon, silent, soft, but unshakable. You reminded everyone watching that true power isn't domination, it's preservation. You preserved your decency, your compassion, and your peace in the middle of dirt. And that's what left everyone speechless. You didn't just survive cruelty, you outclassed it. And that's why now even enemies have to admit you walked through hell and came out still human, and somehow more divine than before. What truly astonished people wasn't what you went through, it was how you went through it. You faced betrayal without becoming bitter. You endured humiliation without losing honor. You walked through chaos without losing calm. You didn't just handle a disgusting situation. You transformed it into a demonstration of what divine character looks like under pressure. You became living proof that grace exists in grime, restraint overpowers retaliation, and peace is the loudest form of power. You didn't need revenge to win. You became the evidence that divine order never fails to balance scales. What was meant to destroy you actually refined you. What should have broken you built your spiritual muscles. Every insult became initiation. Every lie revealed your light. You turned suffering into sacred wisdom. Now the same people who misjudged you are learning from your example. You didn't defend yourself. Time did it. You didn't expose anyone. Patterns did that. You stood still in truth, and truth rose to the surface on its own timing. People are impressed because you showed everyone what divine character looks like when tested. You showed that staying human in an inhuman world is revolution. You taught that walking away in peace is sometimes the most powerful victory there is. You showed that when your spirit stays clean, everything that tried to stain you ends up testifying for you. You didn't just win, you evolved, and evolution is victory only the wise recognize. So stand tall in your light. You've graduated from needing validation to being living verification that divine timing, truth and justice are undefeated. Your story became a spiritual manual for those who don't know how to rise with dignity when dragged through darkness. You turned pain into philosophy, chaos into clarity, humiliation into higher ground. You didn't lose anything, you revealed everything. The universe set up the test. You didn't just pass it, You taught the class. You rewrote the curriculum. You showed everyone watching that chosen ones don't break under pressure. You build empires from it. You don't react to chaos. You restructure it. You don't seek revenge. You become living proof that grace, truth, and dignity will always outlast lies, manipulation, and hatred. That disgusting situation was never meant to destroy you. It was designed to reveal you, and now everyone knows exactly who you are: unshakable, untouchable, undefeated, a chosen one who just reminded the world why you carry that title, not because you're perfect, but because when tested, you showed the kind of strength that can only come from something divine, operating through something human. Others thought an ending was being written for you. You showed everyone you were writing a new beginning, and that chosen one is why people are so impressed, because you didn't just survive a disgusting situation, you turned it into your greatest testimony. You transformed what should have been your worst moment into your most powerful message. You proved that how you handle the disgusting situations in life doesn't just determine who you are, it reveals who you've always been, a chosen one, and nobody can ever take that away from you.